many feel bad for the people that are sick or couldn't make it here today. Well, I'm glad that you're here. And we're working our way through a series called I Quit. And I don't know if you guys know this, but about 10 days ago was my birthday. Most of you missed it, but I'm not going to hold that against you. No, about 10 days ago was my birthday. And a couple of days before my birthday, I was in my bedroom, and I was like, I decided, I don't know what hit me, but I decided that I was going to clean up. I know, it was amazing. And how many know that men like to get credit for stuff when they do it? Stuff that women do every day, you know, you're like, I'm picking up something, can you see this? And so anyways, I started to clean up some laundry, you know, so I was picking up it was my laundry, so I wasn't being really a hero or anything, but I was picking up some laundry and picking up my stuff, and then I was like, where's the hamper? That's how long it's been since I picked up laundry, I didn't know. And I found, oh yeah, she moved the hamper into the closet. So I opened up the closet with my laundry, and I was going to put my laundry in the closet. But on top of the laundry, there was a bag there. And in that bag was something that I knew was a gift for me for my birthday. And so I was going to put the laundry in, and then I saw part of my gift. And then Penny was right there, and I'm like, why would you put my gift right on top of the laundry? She's like, I was sure you would never find it there. Well, joke's on her. Everyone that knows me and Penny, they always think, man, Troy puts up with, Penny puts up with a lot to be married to Troy. I take a lot of abuse too, though, I want you guys to know. No one feels bad. Okay, we're going to start our series. We're making our way through a series called I Quit. We talked about, just a quick review. First week we talked about I quit making excuses. And the takeaway from that was delayed obedience is disobedience. Then we talked about I quit complaining. Our takeaway from that is, for us, I am not the center of the story. You are not the center of the story. But we think we are. I mean, how many would admit you're selfish? I mean, I'd be willing to admit, in our household, I'm the most selfish person in our household. I don't want to generalize, but I think, by and large, men are very selfish. Women seem to be able to put that aside. All the wives are hitting their husband. Calm down, ladies. But women, I think, they put that aside because they have kids to care for. And like in our house, we have 2 dogs, okay? And I've been doing a lot better at complaining, but I cannot stop complaining about these dogs. Okay, like, I hate them. I mean, I'm not going to get rid of them. We made a lifelong commitment to them. But if you really, really want a dog and you can't have one of your own, she's yours. No, but like, I always just complain about them. Oh, they always want to go outside, and they never go outside at the same time. You put one out, you go sit down, the other one wants out. They never come in at the same time. But our dogs, this is no joke, our dogs would starve to death without Penny. They would starve. Every day she's like, has anyone put food in the dog dish? Nobody has, so she does. No, did you feed the dogs? Alice, did you feed the dogs? Troy, did you feed the dogs? And the truth is, we're just more selfish. We're just too busy thinking about ourselves. Where her as a mom, she set aside, like moms do, they set aside themselves and they care for other people. And so I'm going to really work this week. I'll report back next week how I do with complaining less about my dogs. I love them. Today we're going to talk about fear. I quit living in fear. In your bulletin, there's a piece of paper, just has some information that you can use to drive. When you're driving home, you can discuss. There's some discussion questions. We have small groups here on Wednesday. You can bring your sheets there, but take time, write down, fill out the sheet, and that'll be a way to discuss it at home, discuss it in the drive, discuss it at small groups. We live in a world filled with stress and worry. we worry about everything. And kids are more anxious than they've ever been today. And we live in a world that's really surrounded by fear. I found this interesting quote. It said this: I stress about stress before there's even stress to stress about. Then I stress about stressing over stress that doesn't need to be stressed about. It's stressful. We're so like that. I stress about stress before there's even stress to stress about. Then I stress about stressing over stress that doesn't even need to be stressed about. It's very stressful. And that stress, it makes us fearful. Why do you think that we stress and fear so much? And it doesn't seem to matter if someone's a Christian, if they're not Christian, if they go to church or don't go to church. We seem to have all of these fears, things that we're really fearful of. And the truth is, a little bit of fear in our life is good. But if I was here today and I said, okay, Nancy, come on up. You're going to, and her eyes just went, boom, right? Because there's like, all of a sudden there's this certain amount of fear, right? Or if I did it to Rosemary, like, you know what I mean? Or some of you would be like, oh, no problem. But some of you, one of the biggest fears is public speaking. And we have this fear. If I called you and said, hey, can you come to see me on Wednesday? I'd like to meet with you. Would that stress you out? I know if you called me and asked me to meet with you, it would stress me out. I would like to know what it was about. But we automatically seem to go to the worst case scenario, and then we start to stress. I mean, it's good to have a healthy fear in life. I mean, if you were to go on a hike and you were to see a bear, you wouldn't run up to the bear and give it a high five. You have a certain amount of healthy fear that you're like, this bear could eat me. I mean, he'd be really full, but he could eat me. You know, but we have this healthy amount of fear. Or if you were hiking and you went and you were really close to a cliff, you would have a certain amount of fear. I mean, some people have less fear about that stuff, some people have more fear, but you would have a certain amount of fear. I better be careful or I'm going to fall and die. And so a little bit of fear is good. I mean, every Sunday I have a little bit of fear, a little bit of nervousness about standing up in front of everyone, because it's a big thing to stand up and speak in front of people on behalf of what I believe God wants to say. But the real issue is that we turn fears that are rational or normal, and we turn them into fears that are irrational or not normal. So some of you, as soon as we put up the picture of a spider or a snake or someone standing close to an edge, all of you are like, not all of you, but for different reasons, you're like, oh man. Right? How many know someone who's afraid of spiders? Okay, we live in Canada. They can't hurt you. But we have this fear, like, some people, you found a spider, and if you tried to kill it and you lost it, you would burn down your house to make sure that you got that spider. It's turned into this totally irrational fear. Or a mouse, or a snake. I mean, we don't have snakes that look like that in Canada. But this major problem is that we've turned a rational fear, or a normal fear, into something that's irrational. And it just doesn't make sense. And some of you are starting to think about those things in your head. Yeah, I have a fear of snakes, or I have a fear of this, or I have a fear of that. My mother is petrified to death of caterpillars. Caterpillars. Like they're halfway to a butterfly. Like what are you so afraid of? But I know that other people have this same fear. This rational fear that's turned irrational. And I went online and I Googled, what are the most common fears? And people, there's names for every fear you can imagine. A lot of them I can't pronounce. But there's like fear, and there was like some web pages had like 200-300 fears just listed in a row. Here's a few. Agoraphobia, that's the fear of open spaces. Claustrophobia, that's the fear of enclosed spaces. Now, if you have both of those, you're in trouble. Okay, I got both. You're going to have a tough time. Okay? Acrophobia, the fear of heights. Paternohanophobia, the fear of flying. Entomophobia, the fear of insects or bugs. Aphidiophobia, the fear of snakes. Cynophobia, the fear of dogs. Maybe that's my problem. Fear of dogs. Astrophobia, the fear of storms. Trypanophobia, the fear of needles. Mysophobia, the fear of germs. Penny. Arachnophobia, the fear of spiders. Omphallophobia, the fear of belly buttons. What? The fear of belly buttons. Cacomorphobia, the fear of fat people. Latrophobia, the fear of doctors. And the list goes on and 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 on. We've all had fears at different points in our life, every one of us. You might be thinking, say, you know what, I have a fear of this right now or a fear of that. But studies say that babies, when they're very, very young, only fear two things. Number one, the fear of falling. If you have a baby and it's like, oh, and it's the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. They only have these two fears. Later, as babies get older, they develop. Other fears start to happen in their life. Fear is learned. We learn what to be fearful. You see babies, and all of a sudden, just one day at 6 or 4 or 5 or 8 months, they start to be fearful, or they make strange with people. People that they even know, they'll have this fear. And we grow and we develop more fears. And we kind of do this just kind of two different ways. Just naturally in everyday life, we have an experience, or we see it on TV, or we fall or something, and it happens to make us afraid of something. So maybe my mother, when she was a young girl, maybe her brother threw a whole bunch of caterpillars on her. I don't know. But these experiences make us afraid of things. Number two, sometimes other people instill or tell us those fears. I had a niece, and I remember that I was watching her when she was really young, 3, 4 years old. And I remember we were out in the yard, and we were playing in the yard, and a car would drive by. And every time a car would drive by, she would run over to me and hug onto my leg. And I would be like, we're in the yard, we're safe, what are you so afraid of? And she said, my parents tell me, that she was 3, so she could talk. She said, my parents tell me that I have to be careful, or cars are going to run over me, or someone is going to steal me. And so she had internalized this fear, which are real fears, but the way they were told to her, they had created this irrational fear in her. And we all develop fears. You remember growing up, maybe you still do, you were afraid of the dark. Maybe you were afraid of dogs because you had a bad experience with dogs, afraid of spiders. Maybe you were afraid of sleeping alone in your own bed when you were a little kid. When Alice was about 2 years old, she started coming into our room every night, like every night. And all I could think of is she's going to be sleeping in my bed until she's 11. And so we made a decision, and you're going to think we're terrible parents, okay, so get prepared. We made a decision that we were not going to allow her to sleep in our bed. So she would come in, we'd say, no, you can't sleep with us, you have to go back to your bed. And if she didn't want to do that, she would come back again, the battle would happen back and forth, and then I would say, you know what, you can sleep on the floor if you'd like. Bring your blanket, bring your pillow, you can sleep right there. And for 3 years, She slept on the floor every night. I know, I'm a terrible, terrible person. But for me, it was, if I nurture this fear that is building in her life, it's going to turn into something that's irrational. And so for me, I felt we had to be careful about that. And so, around the age of 5 years old, she just kind of broke out of that. She's like, you know what? I can do this. And she did. Some of you grew up and you had a fear of letting your arm or your leg hang over the side of the bed because you thought the boogeyman was going to get you. I hope you don't feel like that still. Some of you have a fear, and you still do, if you go into the bathroom and the curtain's closed, you open the curtain because you saw a movie a long time ago where there was a murderer behind the curtain. And so you have this irrational fear. I asked Penny about that because Penny doesn't watch anything that's remotely scary. Like CSI, too scary for her. And so I asked her, I said, do you go into, just asked her 2 days ago, I said, when you go, she said, well, if I go to bed at night and the curtain's closed, I make sure that I open the curtain in the bathroom. Just to make sure that there's no one. And I always tell her, I said, just because we're watching a scary movie doesn't mean that that event is going to happen to us right at that moment. It doesn't quite work that way. They're not inside the TV saying, oh, there they are, let's get them. Some people here, you fear, even fear of driving to or in Moncton. You have this fear. Maybe it's because you had a bad experience and something happened, or maybe you just lack confidence to do it. But you've got this fear, and this fear in a lot of ways has paralyzed you. So if you need to go to Moncton, you've got to get someone to take you. And those fears become kind of irrational. There's two types of people, really. And I don't know if there's really a name for them, but there's those people who like to take risks. You know someone like that. I know someone like that. I have a good friend, Joel. When Joel goes on vacation, he looks on when we go on a cruise, he'll look on every island for the scariest thing to do. I can go parasailing here, and I can do this here, and then I could do this. I think there's like a 30% chance I die here. I should do that. Like, it's just weird. Then there's me. So Joel's the risk taker. I'm the non-risk taker. I'm more cautious. But no one is more cautious than Penny. So Joel's out sailing in the wind. And Penny won't go anywhere unless both feet are planted on solid ground. She's just not a risk taker that way. She wouldn't go on a what are those things called? Roller coaster. She wouldn't go on a roller coaster. She wouldn't go on a Ferris. She's just not a risk taker. But Joel's like, yeah, we got a 20% chance of dying. This is awesome. But we're all different. There's many things that we're afraid of, but many, many people have one of the next four things. Okay, and here they are. The fear of loss. Many of you, if you're married or you're dating, you have a fear that you're going to lose the person that you love. And that fear becomes greater as you get older. And you have this fear. And the truth is, it could be even a fear of losing your kid, or fear of losing a grandkid. And you've got this fear. It's something that weighs on you as a parent. I probably shared this before, but I remember when I was probably about 12 or 13 years ago. I was leaving a house, and my dad had a similar situation like this happen to him, but I was leaving a house in where I lived in Listowel, the very last house we lived in there, and I was driving down the street. I pulled out of the yard and I started down the street. And this voice, not a loud voice, but a voice in my mind was like, this is the last time you'll ever see your family. And I could hear it, and I recognized it right away. This is not the voice of the Lord. This was not a warning to say, go back, check on your... It wasn't like that. It was designed to put fear into my life. And I remember, I pulled over to the side of the road, I parked the car, and I had a decision to make. Am I going to go back and live in fear? Or am I going to trust God and go forward? But the truth is, I couldn't be with them enough to protect them. I could have protected them that day, maybe the next day. But at some point we were going to be apart, and bad things do happen times. And I just said, God, I give my family to you. Trust you to protect them. And I put my car in drive and drove away. We fear the loss of losing a job, not having enough money. Maybe you have investments and you live in fear of those investments. This last week, me and Penny made our very first investment. Very first one ever. I know we're 43, we're late, I know it. But we made and the only reason we really did it was because of Penny's disability with having hearing aids. If we made this investment, the government would match this investment 3 times the amount of the investment. Okay? And so we're sitting there and they're like, here's your options. There's 4 options or 3 options. Here's the one with no risk. Here's the one with the most risk. And there's these 2 in the middle. What do you want to do? And I knew what Penny wanted to do. She wanted to do the lowest risk because that's Penny. And I'm like, it's not even our money. That's what I was thinking in my head. Oh, this first little bit of money is ours, but they're going to match it. It's going to be the government's money. Who cares if we lose the government's money? Can I get an amen? That's what the government thinks too, by the way. But anyways, so I was like, well, let's just go with the highest risk. Like, it's just a little bit of money. But we like to feel like we're in control. We like to feel like we're in control. And we don't like to be, some people don't like to take risks. And we have this fear of losing control. We all know someone like that who wants to control every detail. But control is usually out of fear. Like we said, we had 306 boxes in there. So one day I came out here and I arranged them all on the stage. And I put all the boxes heading in the same direction so it looked nice and neat. And then some other boxes came and some monster came and put boxes up here and didn't put them in the right way. And I was like, walked up and I'm like, what is wrong with people? We all have that little bit of us that wants to control. Because if we can control things with control, we can feel like we're in control, but we're really not in control. But it makes us feel like we are. We like to fear, we do fear something, losing something that's important. If you're afraid of loss, you can look on your sheet. There's a box there. You just check that for yourself. Number 2, the fear of failure. We feel like we're not good enough. You're too scared to start something because you're afraid that you'll fail or you won't finish it. What has God asked you to do that you haven't done because you're afraid? You're afraid to do it, and that fear is paralyzing you. Maybe you know that you should switch jobs, or you should go to school, or you should start a business. But you think, I'm not sure if I have what it takes. And fear has stopped you. If that's something that you fear, if you feel failure, it's right there, just check that box. Many people fear what they call the fear of rejection. The fear of rejection. Many of us have been rejected in the past. And that's just something that kind of sits there on your heart. And you know what it feels, and you think, there's no way I'm going to let this happen again. So we push people away so that we don't feel rejected again. Maybe you've been rejected in the past, and there's just something that's been hanging around, this fear of rejection. Maybe it's a fear of rejection in your relationships, even friendships, or your marriage, or with your kids. Many parents are controlled by their kids because they are scared their kids will get angry at them and reject them. My kids are angry at me like 40 to 50% of the time. But the difference is, I am fully aware that I am not my children's friend. I'm their dad. And if you live your life trying to be your child's friend, you will live in the fear of rejection. I am not my children's friend. Not at this point in our lives. Someday we'll be friends, you know, when they're 25 years old and they just visit at Christmas and holidays. Not that I'm looking forward to that, but that's a reality. They see that happen. But we have this fear of rejection. And so we try to be our kids' friend. Your kids have lots of friends. They need a mom. They need a dad. They need an aunt. They need an uncle. They need someone to lead them. Maybe you just like to make people happy, and it's caused this fear of rejection. Will people like me? It looks different for everyone. This fear of wanting to make people happy is different for everyone. Will they like my hair? Will they like my clothes? Will they like my looks? For me, it's not that. In my line of work, people get upset at me. It happens. I think that people sometimes forget that pastors are humans. I want you to know I don't live here in a closet and just roll out on Sunday morning. Okay? For me, this is one of my biggest battles. I want to make everyone happy, but I've come to the realization that it's not possible. And because of that, it gives this fear of rejection, and it's difficult for me to process my way through. But it looks different for all of us. Often it will come from the past, or come from a relationship, or someone rejecting you. If that's you, just take a moment. Just check it. There's one more common fear, and it's called the fear of the unknown. The fear of the unknown. What does the future hold? The truth is, none of us know what the future holds. You know, I was online, and I belong to this pastor's group online, and someone made a joke, and they said, "Are you going to bother preparing a sermon for this Sunday? Because I hear the world is going to end on Sunday." And they've been saying that. But we get wrapped up in what does the future hold? What if I get cancer or someone I know does? What if I lose my job? What's going to happen in the future? And the truth is it often gets worse as we get older, this fear of the unknown. We see people around us that are roughly our age, they start to pass away or get sick, and it starts to get difficult. Fear of the unknown, it's hard to work through. The truth is, often people will stay in a bad situation because at least they know the situation. But leaving the situation is the unknown. People will actually stay in abusive relationships because of the unknown. Here's a quote, and I don't know who said this quote, it's unknown. People often only change when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of changing. I mean, we often find ourselves saying things like, you know, things are good right now, but I'm afraid that something bad's going to happen because things are going so good, I'm sure something bad's going to happen. We all have some kind of fear in the unknown. Like I said, I just turned 43 years old. I've been pastoring for 20 years. I have about 22 years left if I pastor till I'm 65 years old. And now more than ever in my life, I find myself looking to the future. Can I get my house paid off? Will I have a good enough car when it comes to retirement? Will I have enough money? We all have this fear of the unknown. Maybe you've checked off one box, maybe you've checked off two, maybe you've checked off four. Because a lot of people battle these four fears, and we live afraid. I want you to know today that fear is from the enemy, the devil. Fear is from the enemy. Those irrational fears, those are from the enemy. It says this in 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And often when we read a verse and someone that maybe you struggle with mental illness or depression or anxiety or anything, and you think, oh, sound mind, that's not me. I looked up this passage in the original language. Power, love, sound mind. Fear is talking in this passage about being coward-like, about being a cowardice or cowering in fear, not walking like you know that you should walk, but hiding and not taking risks. Love is talking about the idea of putting others first before us. Power is the strength to resist evil or to resist temptation. And a sound mind is best translated self-control. A sound mind to control my actions, my thoughts. For God has not given us a spirit of a coward, but of putting others first, resisting temptation, and self-control. Some people will say, well, fear is the opposite of faith. Well, I kind of disagree. Someone said, fear is faith. Fear is faith. It's just faith in the wrong things. Fear's faith is just faith in the wrong things. Fear is placing faith in the unknown. What if this bad thing happened? What if this happens? We've all done that. Your boss asks you to have a chat, and you're like, oh, I'm getting fired. We automatically go to the worst case scenario. Oh, Troy wants to talk to me? I did something wrong. Or someone wants to talk to Troy? They're mad at him. We always go, the school calls you, and they're like, hi, this is the school. And right your way, like, all right, who's dead? Or who stabbed someone with a pencil? Like, you go right to the worst case. The doctor calls you, you're like, I got 10 minutes to live. Like, we go to the worst case scenario. We are living in the what ifs. What if this happened? What if that happened? And then if we have a meeting, and the meeting's in 2 weeks or a week, we are living in stressing about stress for the whole time that meeting, until the meeting comes. Am I the only one? Moses was very guilty of this in the Old Testament. We've been talking about Moses over the last few weeks. What's interesting, God appeared to Moses in a burning bush. And that bush was not being burned, it was just on fire. God was trying to get his attention. And that would be something that you would remember. If you saw a bush that was on fire that wasn't being burned, you'd be like, okay, this is interesting. God says, I'm going to use you to deliver my people in Exodus 4:1. And then Moses immediately starts to play that game. What if? What if? What if? Moses says, what if? What if they don't listen to me? What if? What if they don't hear me? What if they don't listen to me? What if they don't understand me? What if they don't believe me that I saw a bush that was on fire that wasn't being burned? What if? And he started to live in the what ifs. That happened to me just a few weeks ago. I was right over there. And God told me, he said, when you go up, this is what I want you to say, and I want you to say it to this person. And I thought, what if? And I started to run every excuse through my head. What if I embarrass them? What if this? What if? What if? What if? God, I don't do stuff like that. It's going to be very out of character for me. What if? Then I said, I'll do it next week. I'll do it next week. Next week came, I remembered. And God said, no. I said, what do you mean, no? He said, delayed obedience is disobedience. I asked you to do it last week, not today. We live in this what if all the time. Worry is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it won't get you anywhere. Van Wilder. Fear is placing faith in the what ifs. Why do the what ifs matter? Craig Gershell says this. What you fear reveals what you value the most, and it reveals where you trust God the least. What you fear reveals what you value the most, and it reveals where you trust God the least. I'm pretty sure that quote was up there. Someone might want it. So just look at that. Number one, your fear reveals what you value the most. What are you living in fear of? Do you fear losing your marriage? That shows that you value your marriage. You fear losing your child, losing your job, financial security. The list can go on and on. Those are all good things. But what you fear the most reveals where you trust God the least. So are you not trusting God in your marriage, with your children, with your job, with your finances? What you fear reveals what you value the most. And number two, what you fear the most reveals where you trust God the least. So if you're worried about your marriage, you may say that you're trusting God with your marriage, but are you? Why are you so worried? Some people fear not getting everything done that they need to get done in one day. It shows that you value being productive, but it also shows that we value or we get our worth out of what we can do, not who we are in Christ. If you're worried about your children, that reveals something. And I feel your pain. Alex is going to Africa. She's going to Malawi. And she's going the first week of February. It's coming close. And I'm having all these struggles. There's so much going on in the area of Malawi that it's a lot of unrest and a lot of things there that are scary. All that does is show that I value her, that I value my children. But it also reveals where I don't trust God. See, 17 years ago, I stood at an altar, just like this one, and 13 years ago with Noah. And I gave them to God. And that day I made a statement in my heart, and this is what that statement was. Many of you won't understand this statement. You'll be like, you've lost your mind. But here's the statement. I said, God, I would rather them die in your will than to live outside of it. I would rather them die doing what you've asked them to do than to live one day outside. See, but the problem is we say we trust God, but our fear is showing us where we don't trust Him. Do you trust God with your finances, or do you just say you do? Are you generous, or have you convinced yourself that you'll be generous later on when you can afford it? But really, you are not doing what you know what God wants you to do, even though all of your money is God's money, because He gave it to you. This is going to take a little bit of soul searching, a little bit of gut check time. But what is it that you're not trusting God with? Write it down on your sheet. You'll have to be really honest. I'm not trusting God with this. It's my kids or my marriage, my money, my future, or sickness, decisions, future relationships. I think I can speak for most pastors. But for me, here's my fear. My greatest fear is, can I be the person to lead Grace Church to where it needs to go? That's one of my fears. With all the new people, with more volunteers, more problems, more people to make upset, more policies, more budgets, more financial things. Can I be that person? That's my fear. What does that reveal? The fear is what if I don't have the gifts or the talents? What if I'm not a good enough leader to take us to the next level? If I look too far ahead, it scares me. Like I wrote online yesterday that I try to plan and pray about sermon series for even up to a year in advance. But looking ahead becomes scary. Because like, what is that going to look like? Am I going to say what God wants me to say? It can be easy to become overwhelmed. Any career, any calling, you can feel this way. See, but that reveals what I value the most. I value success and approval. But it values where I trust God the least. I'm saying, God, you won't teach me as I go, and you won't be with me. It shows what I value and where I don't trust him. I bet if you surveyed 100 pastors, many of them would give you a very similar answer. Search your heart in the area where you are today. What is it that you do not trust God with? Only you can answer that, but write it on your sheet. I am not trusting God here. I want to encourage you just with two things. Number one is acknowledge your fear. Whatever it is, be honest. And try your best to trust God with that fear. How can you turn it over to him? I'm not saying to pretend like it's not there. I'm not saying to be like an ostrich and put your head in the sand. Funny fact, ostriches don't actually put their head in the sand. They just put their head down low so they can't see anything. But just an ostrich, it just puts its head and tries to ignore the situation. That's not what I'm saying. Just acknowledge and say, God, I choose to trust you no matter what. Secondly, seek God at all costs. Seek him in his word. Seek him through prayer. Seek him with your friends. Have people pray for you. Psalm 34:4 says this, I sought the Lord, and he answered me, and he delivered me from all of my fears. I sought the Lord, and he answered me, and he delivered me from all of my fears. Two stories in closing. A few years ago, Penny started to experience anxiety, and I asked her permission to share this. She started waking up in the middle of the night, and I didn't even know. At first, she was waking up in the middle of the night. I'd look over, she wasn't there, which wasn't odd because she would go to the bathroom often, so I would just go back to sleep. But then after a week or so, I started to wake up, and I'd notice she wasn't there for long periods of time. So first night, I remember I was out looking for her, and I found her, and she was just walking the hall and into the kitchen and back to the hall. And she said, I've been having anxiety through the night. I'm not sure what's going on, and all of these things. We didn't know what to do. We had never experienced anything like this before, and so we prayed and things. But she started to do a few things on her own, and this is what she did. She started to seek God. I would wake up, and she would be worshiping. I would wake up and she'd be walking the hall and she'd be praying. I would wake up and she would be reading her Bible. I'd wake up and I would pray with her. I'd wake up and her mother would be praying with her over the phone. She made playlists about songs of worship, about God being with her. And she would play them all day. She started to change her language, how she talked about it, how she thought about it. During that journey, we discovered some things about some sleep issues that she was having and underlying issues. And we made some changes. But once she got to the root of that fear, it showed what she valued the most. But it revealed where she trusted God the least. That's why it's important to put your finger on your fear. Because what you fear most reveals what you value the most. What you fear, it also reveals where you trust God the least. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and sound mind. Numerous weeks ago, I'd gotten home, I was away. I got a phone call, it was about 9:30 at night, and it was Rochelle. And she said, Troy, we need your help. And so she gave me some details. I got in my car. I took off to St. Antoine to Chris and Ronnie Lee's house. And so Those of you who don't know, Chris and Ronnie Lee, they have 3 kids, going to be 4 kids soon. Ronnie Lee was in Ontario. Chris was at the fire hall across the thing. And earlier in the morning, Gracie had choked. And the ambulance had to be called. Chris kind of got things dislodged and things were okay. But it was very, very scary. The ambulance had to come and check her out. That very same day, at night, Logan was in his room sleeping like he normally would do. And Rochelle felt, I believe, the Lord spoke to her and said, you need to go check her. So she went in the room. And he was kind of like, just not himself. She took him to the bathroom and he was, the only way to explain it is it was like there was like seizure activities like that. So they had to call the ambulance. Chris came over. Ronnie Lee wasn't there. She was close, but she didn't know what was going on. They called her. Her phone was broken. Finally, they got a hold of her. So Chris came, and Logan went non-responsive. Ambulance came. I arrived. They called Ron, who was out of town. Eventually, the ambulance took Logan. Chris went. I was there with Junior and Rochelle. We talked. We did our thing, and then Ronnie Lee came in. She didn't have anything that was going on. She's like, tell me what's going on. So we're trying to give her details. She's like, I got to go to the hospital. How am I going to get there? And all I could think was, you're not driving yourself there. So I said, I'll take you to the hospital. So we get in the car. We start driving to the hospital. And you could tell she was trying so hard to stay calm. She kept just, so how are things? You know, we were trying to do this small talk thing to try to, she was like, well, what happened? And I didn't want to give her a whole bunch of details. I didn't want her to be worried. And so we were going back and forth. We tried the small talk thing to keep her calm, and she did really well. But then she said some words to me that I'll never, ever forget. I'll never forget. She said this. She said, Troy, as soon as I got the call from my friend, I automatically went to the worst. Don't we all? She's like, I automatically went to the worst. Because I didn't know what was happening. She said, but I remembered words that Penny said from a story when Alex was sick when she was a baby and there was a chance that she would die. She said, Troy, I remember that you were scared, and Penny said, no matter what happens, if she lives or if she dies, God is still God. And then she said this. She said, Troy, it would suck to lose my son. She said, but God still, and she started to cry. It would suck to lose my son, but God is still God. See, you can make living in peace and not living in that fear. It doesn't happen by accident. Some of you are thinking here and say, wow, I really wish that I could be like Penny, or I really wish I could be like Ronnie Lee. It only happens one way. If you seek God and you trust Him completely. You might be here and you say, how do I know that I'm being held back by fear? Here's just a couple of questions that you can ask yourself. What do I find myself avoiding? What is it that I find myself continually avoiding? Number 2, what negative things do I find myself continually thinking about? Kids, money, future, sickness, health, whatever. Number 3, what have I known I should do for a long time, but I have not done? Those are just 3 questions that will help you. And if you can answer those, it'll probably point you to where you fear. And it'll point you to what you value and what you fear the most, where you trust God the most. Francis Chan says this: our greatest fear should not be a failure, but succeeding at things that don't really matter. Our greatest fear shouldn't be failure. Our greatest fear should be succeeding at things that don't matter. We put so much time and effort into things that don't matter. We watch Netflix for hours, but we don't have time to read the Bible. We can get over level 800 on Candy Crush, but we can't pray. We work so hard to retire well, but we miss out on so much. We give everything we can to our work, but don't give it to our families. We buy everything our kids wanted, but we don't give them what they really need. We can spend money on what we want, but we can't honor God with our money. We can have lots of things only to realize that things have us. We get our own way only to realize that we're supposed to die to our own way and to follow His way. We think that being happy is the goal, but we miss out on being holy. When you die, unless the Lord comes back, we all will die. Our greatest desire needs to be to hear the words, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." Well done. Do you hear the action to that? Well done. Not good job sitting in church for 52 weeks of the year. Well done. If we're going to do, we can't live in fear. Because fear will always hold us back. I challenge you this morning to take your sheet, try to figure out what your fear is. What you fear the most will reveal where we trust God the least. And then seek God above all else. Why don't we stand together? We'll sing a song in closing.